Dr. Jeff DIY here. In my last video, I showed you how I diagnosed my no dash light, no crank, no start problem in my 2001 Jeep XJ. This video, I'm going to show you how I removed the panels to get to the diagnostic part and how I did the fix. But first, a background story. I've been working on my Jeep for a while, and I finally felt confident enough to take him off-road. As I pulled off the pavement and went past that snowbank, I was like, yeah, solid front axle, no problem, I'll just plow through it. We've blazed some virgin tracks through the snow, had a great time. And as we were coming back to the pavement and busted back on, some people came by and you could tell they were jealous. I wish I could go off-road, but my ramp over and departure angles suck. I guess I'll just go to the grocery store. So it was a pretty triumphant trip. On the way home, we stopped at a restaurant. And you know this part. Once we got out of the restaurant to drive back home, turned the key and no dash, no crank, no start, no nothing. So I did the diagnosis in the last video. Here's how you expose the panels to get to everything, which is a little bit of a trick. You got to pull this part down, and really all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver, because all the screws are Phillips, and eventually a T10 security Torx bit. Here's the Phillips bits getting the plastic part off, and underneath this plastic there's a metal part. It's still just Phillips. I had to remove all this stuff to get to the ignition switch to do the electrical testing, which I did in the last video. As you can see, there was a screw over here on that side as well. I'm making this video super detailed so that if you decided to try to do this on your own Jeep, you could maybe learn from some of my mistakes. But if you're of the type with little patience, you can skip to the 7-minute 17-second mark for the installation of the new parts. Here I'm just showing you how to get off this little shroud thing, or I don't know what it's really called, but this plastic cover. It was kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest with you. Hard to get the screwdriver to line up with the screw because you couldn't see deep in there. And here's the parts. On the left is the ignition switch, then the ignition actuator under that metal panel with the yellow tab sticking out, and then the ignition key cylinder on the right.
This is how you remove the ignition switch if it wasn't already broken.
Press down on the white plastic with a flathead screwdriver to pinch it together to pull it off. And then you got to get the screw off with a security T10 bit. These are special bits which have a little dimple at the top of the bit, and it fits in a little nipple that sticks out of the screw. Here you can see the new part with the old, and I'm showing you the damage of the old part. And then there's the broken off bit of the actuator. You got to turn the key towards the run position to be able to pull this out. I actually had some challenge with it, and it took me 3 tries to get this thing out.
There's the button. I can pull it out and get your key out. But once you go to start it, the key does not come out.
Accessories lock, off, run, or on, and then start.
These are also those T10 security Torx bits, which hold on the panel over the ignition actuator.
Spring that's supposed to go up here, that was missing. That spring attaches from there to right here.
Luckily that spring came in the replacement part kit, but what's missing there, that piece, I had to go to the junkyard to get. You can get them from either a WJ or a KJ, if there's no XJs in the yard. Here's the new actuator part, 924-704. And you can see it comes with a spring and a smaller spring and this little brass slider. You have to install all this stuff.
I think mine came broken actually because that little plastic piece that you can probably see rolling here was supposed to be there.
Here I'm just showing you a picture of the instructions showing that when you assemble it, the brass tab should be behind the plastic. And in my mangled one, the plastic was behind the brass. That's what I took out of the Jeep. Now I'm just putting the part together, the little spring on the brass, then I kind of angled it down at a diagonal to get in between the 2 white plastic tabs, and then you slide it in the slot there. And look, I did it wrong.
So I actually had it wrong. See, the brass has to be behind the little plastic.
No problem, we'll just do it the right way. It's a pretty easy fix. It's important to get this right though before you get it in the Jeep.
So I got to try this again. Get that plastic up there. There we go. Oh, that looks like it makes sense because look, now we got spring action. Well, that lets that fall out. Arrows need to be lined up here, and then there's another arrow right there. So see how I turned that? You want to put it like that, and you don't want it in front like this. You want it directly underneath like that.
Now I'm showing you where the large spring goes.
And then the other thing is, see this little spot here? Mine was missing this. I had to go to the junkyard. You can get these off the KJs or WJs, but that little piece, the little tab at the top, needs to go in here like that. So make sure that's in there. That has to do with your interlock cable. Here you can see it right there sticking out. Now that cable goes in through there. If that's missing, look, then there's nothing in there and the cable won't work properly.
Now onto the ignition switch itself, part US 294.
So you can see how it's supposed to be oriented, and here's what we have with it coming in.
So I just took a flathead screwdriver and gently nudged it in the right direction.
There we go. Not quite yet. Okay, now it's in position.
All right, let's go back to the Jeep and put this stuff in. First, we put in the ignition actuator.
So when you put it in, you have to have it like that. And the end looks like this, which is not the way that you have the ignition lock cylinder. But this is just to put it in first. Then you rotate it to this. So when you're starting out like this, it looks like that. This is how the bottom looks. Not lined up right now. And then you rotate it to line it up once the ignition key is in.
Okay, see how that's oriented there, like at kind of like 9 o'clock? We actually have to rotate it. Now we have to rotate that tab down here to about 6 o'clock. Now that it's in here, it's kind of scooted it over to now have those lined up. And then the way it's gonna look now is pretty much like 12 o'clock.
So when it's locked like that, it's like at 2 o'clock maybe. And then when you turn it, just rotated it a little bit. Now I can press that in and it's closer to 12 o'clock.
Keep it as close to 12 o'clock as possible. Okay. And it's not quite engaging. So I may need to turn this a little. Try to get these to match up. Ah, good, got it. Okay, now you can see it turning. So you definitely want to verify that it's able to do that. And then lock, off, so you keep them out. Then now on. And that would be start.
Take a look at the actuator where it will line up with the ignition switch and make sure it's pointed in the right position to match with that, as we see there. Then you got to put it on. It was kind of tricky, to be honest with you. Couldn't do it on camera, but I was able to get it up in there after a little work. And you can see the white tabs there. You want to make sure that they're lodged in with the black plastic well. Then you do that T10 security Torx bit and get it attached. I made a mistake at first and I screwed this on without having the cable reattached, and I had to redo it because it wouldn't go in. So don't make that mistake. Then, using the large spring in the kit, get it on the little nipple of the actuator and make sure it fits in the dimple of the cover. Then screw in the screws.
I put the electrical connectors back in. And the clip actually didn't really set until I turned the key. So make sure you have that in place.
Okay, well, I just off camera squiggled the key and it turned on, but it's not very easy action. Let's see if we can recreate it. Moment of truth. Yeah! All right. I think these things are prone to break. I would definitely buy at least one, and if you're going on a big trip, two. All right, let's see if we can get him to crank. Come on, Bluey. Yeah!
I purposely made this video super detailed so that if you were going to try to do this yourself, you could learn from my mistakes. If you enjoyed it or if it helped you out, please hit the like button so it's easier to find by others. Consider subscribing. This is Dr. Jeff DIY. I'll see you the next time something breaks.